Hey, Fringe family. We're here with Alec DeJesus in Dallas by way of Peoria many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Our favorite artist. We met because we were modeling for Blue Horse Art Gallery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right after the lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And we were still having our little gatherings. Shh, don't tell anybody. And so we modeled for Alec in a room full of some of the greatest peeps in Dallas.
Incredible drawers.
Incredible drawers and artists and painters. Alec does painting, sketches, but also his biggest presence in Dallas are his murals. So today we'll be discussing that and some, and then some. I've got your first question
All
here.
right.
Yeah?
Shoot.
You ready?
Maybe.
So what is it that listeners need to know about you to understand who you are as a man and an artist?
All right, man. Where to start on that? I guess, one thing, especially coming, we mentioned coming from Peoria to Dallas, something I came here in search for was opportunity, but to also become obsessed with what I'm doing and I was even telling my wife, I'm like, all right, one thing I think I need to do is find a way to become obsessed with this again. I of course was already working the art grind, was still pushing, but there's a different level that I needed to hit, coming into this talent pool and also trying to actually like make a living, start a business doing art. And it was like tap into that just like almost limitless drive. And I think a lot of people that have seen me work, that watch my process and like just kind of keep up with, day to day of what sort of chaos I'm tackling is legitimately an obsession. I feel like everything I do, it's with this sort of hyper focus that like you see in like an alligator's jaws or something. Like I can't let go. And so, I mean, everything I kind of do with art, with my own person is with that sense of just like immense, almost like self-abusive focus.
That dedication. That's good. You're talking about business and art. I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you about just as an artist, was there a difference when okay, you do art, for by yourself, for the sake of it, for the enjoyment of it versus art as a business and having to pay your bills with the art, having to stay alive with the art. Like, is there maybe that just intensified that dedication, but I'm always curious about that. Cause I heard Ari Shafir, the comedian, talk about like doing comedy. Like we started out just doing it with our friends cause it's fun going out. And then he was talking about, now we got to like fucking pay these bills and I'm like making a living doing it. So he's like almost had to like step it up. So I'm just curious if it changed for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like a way to kind of turn it into a metaphor even, it's like, comparing it to just, doing what you're doing, chasing your passion with your friends, maybe, workshopping a bit. You're kind of like sharpening your tools. And then all of a sudden you step into this arena where you have to hunt with them.
Right.
You actually have to like use those tools and when you're workshopping with your friends, when you're drawing in groups, when you're doing these things for practice or for play or just to like get experiment, it's free, it's loose. And then when you try and make a business off of it, not only do you have to have like somewhat of a direction or just like a sense of like, okay, how am I going to work this into a way to make a living and still love it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a big sort of like mental switch to hit because you're going from just like, practice to like, all right, this is real.
Yeah.
It's just got real.
I had a question pertaining to that. So when did you know that art was your path in life?
Yeah,
When did it
that's a
click
good one.
for you in that?
Yeah, so I had always wanted, like I'd always like sketched and drawn and kind of created, whether or not I was supposed to be like in school and stuff. I'm drawing on my stuff, passing notes to my buddies, like drawing the teacher, in some obscene way. But there was a point where actually, like, I'd gone through a couple other potential career paths. I was just kind of like, seeking what I wanted to do in high school, because everyone tells you that's when you're supposed to figure out what you're supposed to do. And I was like, I was going to go into culinary, which I'm a bang up cook, but but
okay.
there's
Yeah,
some layers.
let's talk about
There's some
that.
layers to this onion. But I had this teacher who was like, you could be the best cook in the world, but if you don't like chase this gift. And he was my art teacher at the time, and like he would help me like play hooky in other classes, to like come back to art class and just kind of experiment and do whatever I was doing. But he was like, basically, like, whatever you're chasing right now with this culinary thing, like, might be cool, but you're just gonna end up busting your ass in the kitchen. So
That's a good point.
right, which I still do that now, but it's my own. But he then like started putting me in art competitions in high school, like state competitions and stuff like that, and showing me that like I could actually like win awards and really do something with it. And then after that, he put me into a mentor apprenticeship program, and really just like kind of got me to again like hit that switch, like, okay, this could be something serious. And although I didn't chase it like in a fertile environment, I was still practicing nonstop through that. And even then, he like hooked me up with my first art studio. I mean, it just really set me on that path, aside from just being that thing I did when I was trying to distract myself.
Wow. Shout out to, what was his name, Mr.
Doug Ghostman, rest in
Mr.
peace.
Ghostman.
Yeah.
Way to go,
Wow, what a name, Ghostman. Now he's a ghost. Let's see. Oh, you're talking about your practice. I'm curious. Like, are you like just in terms of, are you like the type that's like a daily discipline, draw every day, or do you draw or paint whenever like the spirit hits you and like you're just like, would you flush a bunch of stuff out?
Yes.
Yeah.
A bit of both. I do think, like, I mean, part of my mentality into just turning this into a business is you got to show up for work. And that's a big part. Like, even if I'm, just brain dead from everything I've been doing, I'm still going to sketch. I'm still going to, like, dive into some art videos. I'm still going to edit. Like, something I do throughout that day is going to be creative, and that's just going to get me on a roll. And so after that, like, inspiration's bound to hit at some point, and then that's where I just jump out of bed at like 2 a.m, start writing, down like, just doing little stories or whatever. But I'm just, it's again kind of with that obsession. But I do come in here like it's my office. And I come in, whether or not I have like a clear direction, I come in, I bang out a couple drawings, and then I start getting into, okay, what's the next like painting going to be? What's the next direction I'm taking? And then how am I going to, find clients? I guess like find direction for the
That reminds
work.
me of like Conor McGregor when he talks about like his obsession and just he's talking about like people are talking about, did you watch the game or politics? He's like, dude, I'm thinking about these sequences on the mat. I'm thinking about these combinations. Like, is all I think about. And like, almost like not losing your mind, but just in the sense of like this is all I'm doing. So it's I don't know. I could see the dedication to all that.
Yeah, and I would say like I definitely I find some way to resonate with that, because I mean it's wild how detached you can be if you're focused on a singular goal, to like what's going on. Because there are times where I'm like, wait, that just happened. Like I'm just getting like a news blast from like 2 months ago or something. I'm like literally in my cave, doing what I'm doing. But yeah, I just get lost.
I love what
wild.
you say about the hyper focus and obsession. And that comes back to a question I wanted to ask you about how do you have different drives now that you're a professional? And how has that changed since, when you came here to Dallas? And what fuels you most to create? What is the major driving force of your art, I suppose?
I guess,
as like principles or values. And
I would say a lot of what you could see in my work is a human connection, right? You see people connecting to people, or people connecting to their environment. And I feel like I grew up very disconnected. I grew up kind of in just like a wily path. And it was my way as like kind of like a tormented little quiet kid to connect to other people and find a way to spark conversations with others. So there's an element of human connection, and also just how I saw the world around me, and I'm still like exploring that. Still, how do I see the world around me? But as far as like driving force, there is that need. I'm here, I'm doing it. I've got to keep it going. And I found ways to do it even in, dismal times where, a lot of artists were falling out and, no blame to them. But even during, 2020, there was so many people that just weren't able to find a way. And that's kind of, if I were to have a mantra or something, is I'm always going to find a way. And that's that workforce mentality. It's like, no matter how bad it's getting, like, at some point I'm going to get out of this, or I'm going to find my little light in the tunnel.
Yeah. Man, this is so beautiful. 'Cause I was thinking about that and how you said that you really started doing the murals in 2020 post lockdown. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, how all of civilization has a common collective line drawn in the sand now. Mm-hmm. There's pre-lockdown versus post-lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you how this affected your art, either positively or negatively. And you're such a positive transport, like you transmute everything. So how did that?
Yeah, definitely. I try and find ways to find the silver lining. But it was a huge switch, and it was definitely I have to find a way moment, because kind of a deal we had in moving here was like, all right, let's give it 2 years. Let's see where we can be at that 2-year mark. And figure out, like, is this something you got to pursue, or do you got to, find another path? Because
you came here in 2018, right? So
so 2 years of 2020, and everything just hit the fan, in some ways it needed to, but in many ways, everybody was just kind of lost for a moment. And it was wild because right before things started getting locked down, I had ordered a bunch of boards from this guy, and it was one of those moments where I'm getting a news blast. He's like, "Hey man, things are like about to totally change, like in the world." I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" He's like, "You're not hearing about like the stuff coming through airports and stuff?" I'm like, "No."
Us too. We don't pay attention. We hear it through the grapevine from other people. We're like, okay, I guess we've got to adjust.
I guess people are taking this serious, I guess.
Yeah. No, exactly. I was like, "Oh, so this is real." And he's like,
"This is getting real."
And and then all of a sudden I start hearing more about, COVID coming through, potentials for lockdowns, and I'm like, man, this could really be weird for people who rely on gallery shows. And at the time, that's really how I was getting my work out there, was through galleries. Not even thinking like, okay, no public gatherings are going to be okay. And I had like 4 big, just juicy shows lined up. And it was like at that 2-year mark, I'm like, okay, things are going good. Like, I'm making painting sales, like, there's something to this. And then all of a sudden they were all canceled. Everything was just dropped. Everything in the art world was dropped. And that's why a lot of artists had to like find other opportunities. And no hate on that. It's just, I was like, I can't. Like, this is the only other thing I'm doing.
Well, I feel like you stepped up your like social media stuff, because like all the like the videos you do and all the like posts and stuff. And I feel like that gets a lot of like traction too. I'm curious about just starting out drawing, because most people, when you start, you're drawing in your little sketchbook, it's small, you're in your own little world, you can shut it anytime. And I'm just curious about that transition to like going from small private to like public big murals in like a big space where everyone sees it now, and like just the transition to that. Or is there like any hesitation with that or anything?
You got to have this like sort of blind confidence, I think, when you're doing, murals, something large scale, especially something like out in the public that's not like a residential piece, or like inside a business, which I love all of those different scenarios. But if you're doing something like a mural where, it's going from like a sketch to going big, you got to kind of lose these like, oh, what if people don't like it? What if, people are going to talk shit down the street? You're going to get some, get some cuckoo birds. You just never know what you're going to run into, and you got to really just be down to open yourself up. That vulnerability, something with comedy, you're going to get hecklers.
You're going to bomb.
You're going to bomb, not every mural started off good. It's just about grinding out to where it does get good.
Because I heard this story with David Cho talking about when he would start drawing, and then his first time doing graffiti and murals, he froze when he got to the wall, and he's like, I don't know what to do, and he would just write David Cho on all these walls, and then so of course, and he didn't know like all these rules going into graffiti. But he's, of course, the police like saw his name and they're like,
straight up name.
yeah, he's saying like he was almost like asking to get caught kind of thing. But
So, pertaining to the murals,
Yeah.
I'd love to know when you started muraling, because I love murals,
Yeah.
and I've always wanted to do more mural work. But I mean, because it's just one of the most incredible mediums, just
It's
take
a
a
wild
big
beast,
blank
yeah.
wall
Yeah.
and then just go ham on it. So how did you create your own luck here in Dallas? Besides being a hustler,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
hustle, and you've got
Yeah.
that hustle street mentality from a really tough place in America,
Yeah.
Peoria, Illinois. That's
Yeah.
rough, dude. Like Richard Pryor's from there,
Yeah.
and the streets, right?
Yeah.
So and then just having like a rough upbringing, a dark kind of poor upbringing, which is wonderful fuel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It makes you
But
hungry.
makes you
Yeah.
hungry. I like that. So how did you create your own luck here in Dallas? Like, what was the process of that, and why Dallas?
So actually, I was put on to Dallas by some family. I had a cousin. She was like, you definitely gotta come check it out here. And props to her, like for really putting it on my radar. And it was right after I had gotten my first like big series of murals, and it was out in Florida. Like somehow I made it to Dallas from Florida, probably just like the housing market. But I was just like, okay, I got to get out of Peoria because, I mean, not even throwing shade there. It's just there wasn't the opportunity that I needed to do art full time, and realizing that. And I think I'd always realized that. I'd always had this drive, like, okay, I need to get to something bigger, to some more fertile soil. But I mean, coming to Dallas, it was wild because another thing with anyone who's relocated to a place where they have, limited connections, like you really do kind of find yourself as like a moving island. And you have to like find other little islands to like crash into a little bit. And sometimes it's messy and sometimes it works. But, it's not even to say luck. There was a lot of hard work, and there was a lot of, I would say the biggest trick that I had was networking, was like going out to every single like art event. Like I treated it like a chessboard essentially, and I didn't even know how the game was played yet. So I needed to figure out like all the players, all the other artists, all the promoters, everybody in the art scene, get to know them, put myself in front of them, see who I wanted to like, work with, see who I wanted to maybe stay away from. Like, okay, that piece might take out a few of mine. But it was a lot of like coming here, getting to understand the scene and not losing sight of my mission, because I feel like a lot of creatives can get pulled, by maybe a commission or something like, hey, can you do this thing that's like completely off your path, and finding ways to like filter those out and stick to what I'm doing, because to keep doing what I'm doing, all I could do and all I need to work on is the stuff that's going to get me there. So there was a lot of sort of like curating my opportunities after I had really gotten my name out there. And there was a lot of just building my community, really like embracing the social aspect that a lot of people don't relate to being an artist. Because art is typically a solitary thing. You're in your studio, you're alone, you're making work.
So you created a chain of islands with all these.
I did, yeah.
That's beautiful. So you have this really strong, seemingly, and we've met some of them as, like your wife Shayna, who's now expecting a child.
Congrats.
Yes.
That's a whole other little island.
Maybe his greatest creation yet.
Yeah, no,
Right.
honestly.
So you're married to the lovely and gracious Shayna, who we had the pleasure of meeting while on retreat a couple of years ago, an artist retreat with Blue Horse. So has this changed your process or purpose within your art in any way so far? And how do you foresee becoming a father further evolving your process?
As far as like Shayna changing my process?
Yeah, just within your support system, how is that,
Building family.
evolved your art and your process? Because you are a very driven person. And some people actually thrive on that kind of loneliness or that isolation. But you have this, beautiful support system around you now, and you're becoming a father.
Yeah,
So
super scary. And that's scary for personal reasons. I feel like a big part of Shayna also being a support system is she really got me to rework in my head what being a family member even was, like even allowing myself to not be so independent
I feel
all the
that.
time. So there was a big sort of like a trust fall, essentially. Even being able to pursue this full time, there was that 2-year period where we're like, okay, you're kind of you're quitting your job, we're moving to a whole
Right.
new state, new city, everything, and we're just going to trust that your hard work is going to push it. A big part of that trust she gave to me, I mean, it just supercharged my battery. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, now it's not just me. Like, I can't let these other people down, and maybe it's a responsibility drive or something, but there's just that pressure for me. I'm like, okay, this is my partner. They're giving me this weird, like, beautiful Lady and the Tramp moment where it's like, okay, if you're gonna really chase this, like, we're gonna help however we can.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And that was just giving me the opportunity and the time to actually pursue this, and given that, and especially growing up poor, like, the second you get that taste that, like, all right, this is going to work, it's just, I chased it like crazy. But that helped me develop just super fast and super aggressively, even my artwork. It got me to really push. It got me to really, like, everything I was doing, I needed to do it like 20 times better in like 3 seconds. Like, let's just go crazy fast, real hard, and just pursue it like a wild animal. But kind of taking that, and then all of a sudden, now things are really picking up. I'm having to dedicate a lot of time. I mean, a ton of time. Like, when I wake up, sometimes I wake up just because I know I have stuff to do. I'd say most days I wake up just off of that panic.
same.
Yeah, it just wakes you up, like, the stress, but it's a good stress.
Yeah.
But to even, like, be with an artist or be with a creative that is that dedicated to this pursuit, you got to be patient. You also got to understand that, like, there's going to be 12, 16-hour days where they're just off doing their thing, and being able to trust that, and
Yeah.
sometimes be that partner that's just like, all right, whenever you get home and are just limping into the house, like, I'll get you a little grub or something. So even just that support of just understanding how much time and dedication gets put into this, and then also the way she's helped this whole process was on the technical side. Like, I'm coming into this without a degree. I'm coming into this without any, like, actual training. And so even to have that person help handle some of the admin stuff, help put together presentations with me, where I'm just like the bossy creative director. I'm like, no, put this here, but I have no idea how to put this here.
That has to free up so much for you artistically, though. That's
Right.
amazing.
It lets me, it's like, and I think too, if you're chasing this as a business, you've got to consider, like, where is my time spent most valuable? And it is not putting together, like, an online portfolio or something, which, I mean, it's necessary. It's, like, most needed. But where my return is greatest is when I'm making.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Did you have like a defining moment where you knew that you were going to be successful in your art, where you're like, okay, this is real. Like, this is
I think there are definitely those milestone moments where I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing this. Like, like, this might actually be something. I think my first travel mural was definitely one of those. I think, even recently I had one of those moments where I even choked a little bit, and I'm sure, you guys have had those moments where you're like, wait, what am I going to say?
Oh, yeah.
But I found myself, like, artist, kind of like self-made in my practice, no art school backing or anything, and then all of a sudden I'm, like, side by side with one of, like, the most respected artists out here, and I have to give an artist talk where we're basically, like, improvising between each other, doing a presentation on this collab at a museum. And I'm like, y'all,
Wasn't
what am I
expecting this.
doing up here? But at the same time, like knowing that I've put in the effort and the work to be there, you know, I think it's wild to just have those moments where you're like, holy shit, I'm here. And then I earned it at the same time.
Yeah, like that old adage that you say, you're like what, how's it go? Like you're a street kid in the country club.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you are a street kid in the country club, and I have a lot of those feelings because you know I practice a lot of this self-taught. You know, I had a little guidance coming up and having those mentors go like, okay, you really got to chase this. Here's this program. Here's this competition. Like those kind of moments definitely helped set me on this path. And I think even kind of going back to like now I've got a kid on the way, and where I am going to have to go down this journey of self-discovery too, like being a dad with, you know, very little what to do's already in my skill set. You know, a lot of this is just going to be learning on the fly, being there for them. And I think the way that that's going to motivate and push and help me find my milestones is going to be different, but like magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. What was the like first time you ever got like attention with your art? Like just when you were like a kid, like what was the first time where someone said, "Wow, you're like really good," and like you're like, "Oh, okay, I thought it was just kind of normal," but like
yeah, I'm just like drawing these like action figures I can't afford, you know, or like Dragon Ball Z characters, and no, it's wild and kind of again how I would find ways to like connect with other people was, you know, I'd just be in there doing my drawings and in school or something, and people would be like, oh, like, look at this kid, he can draw. And then they'll be like, draw this logo for me. I'm like, I'm lost again, you know? But I think like, yeah, growing up, not really having anything, like I didn't have like all the cool stuff that other kids had, but I had this like thing that I could do.
Yeah.
And that made me like, you know, I was still like the weird art kid, but I was cool with everybody.
It's a little social
like
currency,
yeah, it was, you know, like if I was in prison, I was doing the tattoos, you know, like we're good.
I think it also still is here, right? The 18+ million in Dallas. I mean, it's easy to fall into the cracks, but you do not, and you keep persisting, and you are like, you know, a big influence here in Dallas
I'm trying,
now.
you know, it's wild, and it's wild. Like I find myself, you know, I have these moments and they're these like, okay, I'm doing this moment where I'm just like driving through these crazy highways out here and you're like basically soaring on concrete through the city, like through downtown. And I'm like, wait a second, this is a big city. Like this is a big city with a lot of people.
It's a monster, dude. It's like ranked 16th in world cities. If not more than that.
That's like reflecting on that. It's mind boggling for me because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to do my thing. You know, I'm not like trying to be too cocky about it or anything like that. But you know, it's those moments where I'm like, you know, it's just seeing how like grand of a playground this place is. And then going like, I'm actually like out here,
right.
You know, I'm sparkling a little bit, you know, I'm shining.
Big time.
Yeah, I got this from your website about it says you turn to art as a means of escaping a rough upbringing and focuses on enveloping a very real message of strength and pride through perseverance. So I'm just curious. I've always been fascinated with this topic of, do you think like trauma or suffering is necessary for like creative juices? Like, cause I heard like, you know who Tony Hinchcliffe is of Kill Tony?
Yeah.
The show.
Yeah.
He always asks these people like when they're not funny. He's like, were your parents together? And cause he's got this theory. He's like, I think he's like, I think more people are funny when they had like kind of like a wild childhood type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious on your take on that.
It's the edge.
Yeah. It's a little extra seasoning, I think. You know, like I feel like it adds some flavor. I don't think it's like I think that a skilled artist can kind of come from anywhere, but at the same point, you know, I think a lot of my experiences drove me to. I mean, even just my mentality, my workhorse nature. You know, I'm gonna push like beyond because I've been hungry, still hungry. Like I'm never gonna forget it.
Yeah.
And to even be told like growing up, like, look, you're not going to really have any help. Like, you know, you're probably just going to have to work or you're going to have to, you know, figure it out. And really kind of finding ways to lean into that, has helped me develop. And I think that's kind of my edge in situations because I've also been in, you know, bad situations growing up where I'm like, man, I'm just a danger to myself at this point.
Right.
And finding ways to dive back into art to like save myself from it. So for me, it's so much more, or it's so much more to me, you know, it's all relative, but I think, you know, to have those scars, to like go through it, you know, to know these pains through life, it makes you immensely grateful.
Gratitude.
Yeah. And so just like, you know, feeling that sort of like validation from the thing I'm doing, from the thing I'm creating, it keeps pushing.
Yeah, because I always hear a lot of comedians, they always talk about, some of them, they're like scared to get therapy because like, oh, I'm going to not be funny anymore. I'm going to lose my edge on that. So they're like, it's this weird kind of like, like almost destructive nature of like, oh, I got to keep being this. So I don't want to get better. But I don't think you have to like keep suffering though. Even if you've been through stuff, like you don't have to like, you can still use something from back then. Like you don't have to like keep it going throughout your whole life. But
yeah, I definitely don't try to suffer it.
Yeah,
but
for
you
sure.
lean into those feelings.
That's beautiful. I definitely don't. I don't either. So, yeah. Like that's what I was asking was, do you pull from a well of suffering anymore? And I think that's what he was saying too. Is like, you know, what is that the major influences in your art?
You're saying seasoning. I feel like it's perfect because it's like like I said, it's not necessary, but it adds a lot. And I feel like people who I don't know, like people when you see certain art, you're like, they always say like when you bond with the piece of art, it's like your soul with like the artist's soul. Like you're seeing something deep in there that you resonate with. So it's
Hell yeah. You have such a focus-driven, just beautiful mindscape to work from. But I have a question about, have you ever had a fear of success?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, even coming here, I would say like, there's that panic of like, okay, what if this works out and then I don't know how to tackle it? You know, what if it changes something? What if it hits the switch? And I think, although I don't try to, you know, like I just said, like I don't really try to suffer anymore, but like not forgetting where I'm coming from, is a big part of like not getting lost in it, not getting, you know,
It's
like,
that fine
too
balance.
confident. Yeah, it's like, you know, stay humble from where you know you're coming from.
Like you said, humble and hungry.
Humble and hungry.
Stay hungry. I love that. So with that also, have you ever had, just to veer off a little bit here, have you ever had a near-death experience?
I mean, definitely like close calls, I would say. I definitely been in some situations that like could have ended pretty poorly. I definitely just, you know, kind of coming up the way I did. I was definitely in situations that
Like
really
at
get
risk.
really get you contemplating your mortality. But off the top of my head, you know, I can't say that there was any point where I was like injured to the point of being on that level.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hurt, but
Okay, I got this question kind of about, okay, I saw this one artist, they were painting like like when you look at it, it looks like a child's paper mache kind of thing, but then when you get closer, it's all oil painted. So like the texture of the paper, so I don't know, so like, you know, it looked like I don't know, there's something to say about kids art, but I'm just curious about like what you think on like form versus context. Like the skill that he displayed was amazing, like the technical ability, but like I wouldn't say it like moved you enough, but in terms of like the context or the content of what's in there. But so I'm just curious of like how you, because you have like so much like skill, like abilities, and also have like a message in there and everything. So I don't know. I'm just curious because I remember working with one artist who like amazing painter. She was like in museums and stuff, but she just, you know, it's just like, it was just a head. It was just a portrait, and you're like, yeah, it's amazing, but I'm not like, wow. And this other artist she was friends with, like people would like be in tears like when they'd see her stuff, but it wasn't necessarily as like the brushstrokes weren't as good type of thing,
like
but
masterful. Yeah,
so I don't know. I get torn on like appreciating ability and then appreciating like the message of stuff, but I feel like you have a good balance of that though.
I think like what I like to see in art is like, you know, definitely because I put forth a lot of it. I like to see effort. I like to see some dedication.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's okay if it's imbalanced on which side. But yeah, sometimes you're just like, okay, it's just another really good face. Yeah. Or it's, you know, or sometimes you're like, this kind of looks like a mess, but the message is really cool. So it's like, you know, what part is the artist trying to spark, and then what part is gonna, resonate with you.
Yeah.
I feel like, my bias is definitely like, I like to see something that impresses me. Even if it's, not necessarily in the execution, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like that caught me off guard, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
I might be getting a little allergies or something.
You have a beautiful balance of technique,
Thank
an incredibly organic and original style, and you infuse so much emotion and power into it. What is the ideal impact that you want your art to have on the viewer?
I would say something that, with what I'm doing, I like to say that like I know where I'm going. Not really sure how I'm getting there, so it is like really like emotion, like mental state driven. When I'm creating a piece, and I have an image in mind, and it always evolves past what I have in mind. By being instinctual, and what I find that's really cool is a lot of times what I'm making, image or just the style of it or just the mark making, maybe it's a little lighter, a little heavier. People who aren't even, into art, like will see something in there and just be like, they'll pull that out themselves. They'll kind of touches on their instincts a bit too. But I really dig when somebody sees something that I've done and they relate to that moment in some way. And like, even if it's not like, maybe it's just like a bear or something, or it's like an animal, it's like completely unrelated, they'll still pick up on that. So it's like these almost like subliminal messages through marks and these ways to relate. But I like when those pieces resonate with the viewer and it takes them to a moment for them. It doesn't even have to be my meaning. It's when it takes them somewhere.
Have you had a favorite moment with a fan at one of your shows or while you're working?
There's, I would say the first thing that pops into my head, it was the first big mural I did. It was out in Florida. My buddy John, he hooked me up with this opportunity, and it was incredible because a lot of the student body at the school.
Was that high school or like?
It was a university, a college. Which is like also ironic because like I don't have a degree and I'm like I'm at these colleges like speaking to students going like listen to your teacher but like do it because this stuff's hard. But I was doing this mural and it was called Make Your Own Wings, Make Your Own Way. And that's been a big tag for me. It's something I kind of recycle in my head. But I was doing this mural and I was talking to these kids and they're all coming from just situations that us as Americans typically can't even like connect to. But in many of the ways that I grew up and in many of the ways that I had gotten to that point in my journey, I'd definitely been in wild, just gnarly situations and come from poverty and
I can relate.
right. And you find these ways where you're like, no, I really did grow up in a way that would just really screw up some people.
Yes.
And throughout the process of this mural where I'm talking about make your own wings, make your own way, which kind of speaks for itself. It's like you rely on your gifts and they'll take you beyond whatever your station is, whatever your caste in society is. Like if you really can lean in on your gift or whatever you can find to like actually focus yourself, you can elevate. But I was talking about that. Yeah. Preach. But I was talking to students who were coming from we're talking like Haiti and stuff and finding opportunities to come and find like a better life in the US, and this was in Florida. So most of the people were coming from just all over, but it was like a mostly international student body, I would say. And all of them coming to pursue this American dream, which a lot of us lose sight of. We're entitled to it. But I'm talking to them and just sharing my story, and some of them are like crying and like, like I relate to that, and those are those moments that I'm just like, I'm doing this.
I'm curious, what do you listen to while you paint or draw or?
Oh, man, so much. Like it's so much. Like,
is it music or like podcasts or
so
both?
A lot of times it's music. Depending on the project, I'll listen to like podcasts relating to whatever subject. Like I just did this piece in Lower Greenville where I was like portraying a lot of wildlife and stuff native to Texas. So I started listening to like like old native myths and legends and stuff like that. So I was listening to podcasts like on that to just like get into stories that like, you know, like my basic school growing up didn't have, you know, history books on. So I was absorbing stuff like that. So I'll do, you know, podcasts in that sense. A lot of times I would listen to like, this was earlier on, I would listen to like some comedians and stuff like, Chris Rock was definitely a big one, just to get me distracted. But when I'm listening, it depends, you know, it depends on the mood. It depends on what I'm painting. I would say, I mean, a lot of like hip hop, because I mean, the poetry, the flow, the energy, like, I mean, that really does it for me. And then it goes from like that to like jazz to like folk stuff from all over the world. I'm like, it's like, you would just not see it coming, some of the shit I'm listening to.
So you're so eclectic, but do you have a song that's just a banger for you right now, that's just kind of like fire, that you could share with your audience?
What's getting your juices flowing lately?
Let's get the juices flowing. If we're talking about like, you know, recent artists, on the lighter side, I get into The Weeknd a lot for his lyrics, and the voice is just incredible. But even softer than that, like I was listening to a lot of Sam Cooke the other day. Yeah, it was, I mean,
Yes.
and like even going from that, and then like the more aggressive stuff, like we'll go to like Key Glock and stuff. Like it's, I mean, it's such a transfer. But and then a lot of jazz. Like I'll just kind of like pick. Like I was listening to the soundtracks from like Taxi Driver and stuff, and then just let Spotify take the wheel. But it goes all over the place. It really does.
I'm curious. Yeah, what was that blues one you did in Deep Ellum? That
Freddie King.
Yeah,
which I picked him for a specific reason, because granted he was a Texas native, but he had gone to Chicago to kind of cut his teeth and make it as a blues artist, but he couldn't because they already had a king. They had BB King out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was I think it was BB. Don't quote me on it, but. But he had actually, like, he couldn't find his footing out there, and so he ended up coming back to Dallas. And he's got songs about it. But he came back to Dallas to, like, and that's where he boomed. That's where he, took off. And I'm like,
a lot of
okay.
a lot of correlations there.
Yeah, so that's why I just stuck to it.
Yeah, that cross-sectioning. Oh, that's beautiful.
Do you got any more art-related questions? I got some other, like, random ones, but...
I'm here for all of them. Yeah.
So we have some like random rapid fire questions for you that
Here
are
for
just
it.
some fun stuff.
Well, yeah, I know, and I know you're like into boxing and like Muay Thai, so I'm curious, like what similarities do you see in like boxing, striking versus an art, creating art, and and do you view martial arts as an art?
Yeah, definitely view it as an art. Even when I was training like pretty hardcore, this was back in Illinois, and joining this Muay Thai gym, it like saved me. I was just like a reckless wild animal in my party phase, and I had no peace of mind whatsoever, and I was drowning all the things I was supposed to be coping with and dealing with. I was drowning it out. But then I got into this gym, and like I learned real fast that you cannot go from partying until 4 a.m. to showing up at class at 9, because your coach will make sure you get kicked in the stomach.
Yeah, that keeps you accountable, doesn't it?
So it got me to be more responsible for myself. It gave me a lot of drive, work ethic, dedication was a big one, because you had to show up, no matter how sore you were. But something that my coaches would say is like, it's all like a dance. This is an art form. It's about coordination. And a lot of my mark making, a lot of being able to scale my work up on the side of a building is being coordinated and understanding, this motion, and being able to repeat it or execute it in like one shot. So I would say coordination is a huge part of what I do, but even the mark making and the confidence in that. Especially if I'm working with ink on paper, I've got to either execute the move or it's got to like work out, for better or worse. So it's huge in that aspect, but it's huge in the mental aspect. It calms me down a lot, and people might relate martial arts to like, oh, it's violent, it's vicious, whatever. You're just learning to hurt. It's like, no, I'm hurting the demons in here. That's the only thing I'm hurting.
It's such the opposite. Yeah, Like I just restarted jujitsu, and like I didn't go for like 3 years. My first class back, I rolled for 10 minutes, and afterwards I threw up. And so I was like, and you're talking about, yeah, it makes me more accountable. It's like I need to get my cardio back, man, and just and like you're saying, like everyone starts out as a white belt. You're gonna suck, like you're gonna get your ass kicked. So I view that the same as art when people are like, I can't draw, like I don't know what to do, and then
how many bad drawings have you made?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you gotta build it up.
Yeah, like you're gonna get your ass kicked, and then you get better. You learn a few techniques, then you just keep building and expanding on that.
Yeah.
So, what does the first hour of your day look like?
Oh, okay. I can walk you through it. So I get up. Usually I'm waking up for some reason, and I hate it. I love it and I hate it. But I wake up earlier on the weekends, and it's just natural. But I wake up, get some coffee going. I'm a fiend. I mean, I admit it. I'm a coffee fiend. But I get some coffee going, feed my dog. If say we're just doing the weekend, Shayna's still asleep, I'm getting her coffee ready. Maybe I've got enough time to cook some breakfast. But then I dive into like emails, video editing. Usually I'll give myself that 1 cup of coffee before I start diving into everything. But a lot of times I'm like, but that video could be finished sooner. So, so I start diving into like the creative admin type stuff, or responding to emails. So that's like in that first hour, like all that's getting done, or started. Maybe it takes a little longer, but that's like how I'll kick off my morning. Is like that, and then what I call the quiet hours is like when I'm the only person up, and maybe that's also why I wake up.
That's my jam. Yes, that's the fluid for me. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I'm not even listening to like music yet, and I pretty much like live to a beat. I mean, I listen to so much stuff, but when I wake up, I give myself that cup of coffee, and then I start. No matter how early.
You're such a powerhouse, man. I mean, and definitely that's what it takes to be as successful as you are. Is the driving force behind what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop. Essentially, like, I mean, even yesterday I was part of a show. I was going to a networking event here, and I was like in 2 places at once, and just bouncing around through the city, and then at the same time doing drop-offs, organizing other stuff throughout the day. I mean, every single day there's like a laundry list style or grocery style list of to-dos. And I write those out, and I cross it off, and that gives me a little fuel for the next to do.
Yeah, I'm all about lists too.
yeah,
it really keeps my mind organized.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise I'm forgetting stuff. Like, let's be real. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's a nonstop train.
So yeah, you have to like. You don't just go straight into painting. You're talking about like that creative administrative you're like kind of getting your ducks in a row, and then you're like, okay, now I'm like set and ready to go.
Yeah, and I learned that in the first mentor apprentice program. It's called the MAP program. I first learned that like you don't have to dive into exactly what you're doing to start your creative process. We started doing photography to kick things off. And they were just like, if you go out for 30 minutes, just snapping shots, even if you're not a photographer, that's not your focus. You're getting your brain, thinking in that creative pattern. So warming up the muscle.
Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you this. You're kind of saying some of these, but is there a quote you live by or think of often, or if you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere, and like, what would you say? What would you put on there?
Okay, I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
And we're going back to martial arts on this. Muhammad Ali has one, and I may not say it like directly, but it's service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I'd say that's a big part of what I do. I do a lot of community-based stuff that line up with different things in my life, and that's not to say that I'm not sympathetic to other causes, but I feel like if my art's going towards it, it's got to line up with my story.
This one, could you tell us what's going on with that painting?
Right, but your other was you had 2.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And then the other is it's kind of about being hard-headed, no matter where your starting point is, but it's Bruce Lee. It's we got some greats here. But it's to hell with circumstance. I'll create my own opportunity.
Yeah, you've said that a lot throughout the interview.
It's like
Yeah.
the wings thing you're talking about.
Yeah, make your own wings, make your own way. It's like no matter where
Yeah.
you're coming from, if you just have this like relentless pursuit of what you're trying to do, like it can
Yes.
go somewhere.
I can relate to that. I think both B and I can relate to that, just growing up in uncertainty and chaos. And especially with, I can relate to the poverty. And we were never stable. We were always moving.
Yeah.
And, you know, just, and having a history of mental illness in my family, it was a lot to contend with as a child.
Yeah,
So I see that.
forces
You know,
you to be the parent a bit.
Right, and we had to self-parent, right?
Yeah.
I had to be my own mother, and definitely, you know, the masculine in me had to take over because my father was absent. So, I love that you work so much in the community, and maybe not social justice warrior is the right title, but
Yeah.
like B was saying, you have this painting that you just started over here.
Yeah,
Would
so
love to hear more about that because it's very intriguing.
Yeah, so even this, it's an organization I've worked with a few times. It's always like a feel good, a little heartwarming moment. Oh yeah, bring it on in.
Yeah, let's bring it on over.
Gotta advertise.
Or we could pop it back here, maybe.
Yeah, here.
Yeah,
Might knock the.
if that's okay.
It's an interesting story and cause.
Yeah, so I haven't even painted on this one yet, but I've worked with this organization a few times. It's called Chase's Place, and what they do is they work with a lot of youth. It's like a school program. Work with a lot of youth that's on the autism spectrum, various other, you know, sort of issues that they might be coming up with. But what they do is they put them through different courses, classes. They educate them and also help them communicate with the world, help them communicate with others, and also be productive. They teach them, you know, like workplace skills, training, get them ready for life. You know, as
Yeah.
you know, as much as they might have been viewed as unable to do the same things, you know, they're living life to the fullest in their own way, and that's all we can all do. But what's going on with this is a couple of students have, you know, kind of started the process for me, and then I'm just going to collaborate with them. And what I try to do in this is leave as much of what they do on the piece, you know. And some
Yeah.
artists, they'll see this, are like, okay, it's abstract, I'm gonna like just, you know, cover up most of this with my own vision. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna stare at this until it drives me a little loopy, and I'm gonna pick, like, you know, little sections like this, and I'm gonna dance around what they're doing, so they're leading the waltz.
I like that.
And yeah, I really like resonate with what they're doing.
They are leading us.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally. So that's
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're leading the conversation, and that's the best way that they can communicate too, is in their own sense, and we got to meet them. And yeah, it's, I don't know, everything, and going to see the program, what they're doing is beautiful. The students are beautiful. I mean, it's incredible, like heartwarmer for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the program called again?
Chase's Place.
Chase's Place. Okay.
Yeah, and it's
Cool.
like the student to teacher ratio is real tight too. It's like 2 students per teacher, so they're super like well paid attention to, which, man, a lot of us could have used. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah, we needed that. We fought for that so hard in public school, but you know,
Yeah.
30 kids to one
it's
person
not-
is
Yeah,
just
you-
brutal.
yeah, you're gonna slip through
especially
the
with
cracks.
art, you know, because
Yeah.
they can't get any individual time to
Right,
develop
right.
their individuality. Yeah. So, where is Chase's Place? Is
Dallas.
local in Dallas?
Yeah. So
Nice.
we're pretty close, and then other people organizing the program are like over in East Dallas, like right by us, but they've come to shows. I sponsored, or I helped sponsor one of their events. I did like a lot of their like design work for them, let them use the clouds and stuff. And
Oh,
like,
nice.
yeah. So it's like, it's been kind of a growing collaboration between me and this group. And I don't know, I love what they do, and I'm happy to like, again, it's like back to that Muhammad Ali quote, right? It's like, you know, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And yeah, that's a big part. You know, it's not just for me to feel good. It's about, you know, what's my art about? Human connection. So, you know, it's got to be to everybody.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's a great cause.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here's a random one. What's something you believe in that other people think is insane?
That was my next question too. Yes, give it to us.
That I believe in that other people is insane.
That they think you're insane for.
art is a full-time job. Yeah.
Really? So you've gotten some
They might be
opposition
right.
in
They
this
might
idea?
be right. Yeah. They might be right. I think it's a lot for some people to, learn that the starving artist stereotype doesn't have to be real. And that also, you'd be surprised at every single level. This is a gift that people will raise you up for and tear you down at the same time. They'll be like, "Oh, I love your work so much," but then can you decrease the price? And I'm like, don't
You
love
can't
it all the way?
decrease value. I mean, that's, yeah.
You can't pay less for the same thing.
I love it to an extent, but
Right. My wallet is that extent.
So going back to your childhood just once more,
Yeah.
what did you find that you could do completely unabashed in contentment forever without being interrupted when you were 8 years old?
Okay, something, and that's because I would kind of create that physical boundary. Is I would go hike. I'd go run off to the woods, and and you see clouds in my work all the time. I'd just go out, stare at the clouds. Kind of create my home away from home. And so there's a place where I could be somewhat, without limit.
Could you tell us more about the clouds? Because that was
Yeah.
something I wanted to ask you about. Because I remember you came to us and you were so excited about the development of these clouds, and
Yeah.
we got to see you while you were in process of that.
Yeah.
For the most part, I believe. And
Yeah.
so, what is the story about behind your signature cumulus cloud?
So,
Here you have.
and yeah, it's always the cumulus. Like for me, it's like those I could sculpt the most. Essentially, like as a kid, I could find the most stuff in those big, royal, fluffy, gigantic clouds. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it's only been in the past like few years, I'd say like maybe 5-6 years, that I've really sort of dove into developing the clouds in my work. But yeah, it's this way. It's like the happy place in every piece. But it's also, where I can kind of like intuitively kind of dive into my thought process a little bit, just kind of make the marks, make the shapes, let them flow. The thing about, clouds, aside from the fact that I give them all like a hard line, is they kind of just develop. I just kind of just start swooping. I start, making my marks. It's a bit freestyled. But yeah, and then there's so many other things that you can relate to them, dreams, daydreaming. And then, yeah, there's ways to change the shape. There's a way to...
yeah, they're always changing.
They're always changing. And also with some of my other work, which is something that I got from the, watching clouds and trying to find stuff in them as a kid, is with a lot of my work and this piece here, I'll stare at it until I start finding something. So that process came from it.
Oh, right. Like, was it like staring at clouds and like trying to, like, what do you see?
Figure it out. And even, with some of my pieces that I make on recycled surfaces, there's a whole history there that I don't really want to disturb. I just want to elaborate on. And so, yeah, that whole part of the process came from it.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, just the symbology, like head in the clouds, and it's like you're expansive and everything. But let's see, we only got a couple more, I think. But this is how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success, or do you have like a favorite failure of yours?
I don't know about favorite. I feel like each one kind of sets you up for success in the future. It's all lessons. I've definitely had some issues, like professional issues, where, I find myself in these situations that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm not going to open myself up to this, or, this communication went so haywire that like we can't even connect on a common ground. That's happened. And I try to be as open and not necessarily flexible, but easy to work with.
Yeah, you're such an agreeable person. It's amazing just how cooperative you are. Yeah.
It's all part of the process. It's all part of the trip.
That's very martial arts too, like we're talking about, because like you get hit a lot or you get choked out. I'm like, okay, I don't do that again. I need to defend that. So
yeah, each time and
you win or you learn.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to bomb. You got to fuck up. Like
yeah.
I have a question about, do you have a personal affirmation in your own words that you can give to your young audience?
I would say for me, it's again about being faced with opposition and kind of embracing your own resilience. Is I'll find a way, and that's constantly thinking strategically.
Like hence the concrete dandelion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was your show that we bought the bad dog piece from.
Yeah.
So that piece really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about thrifting, there's these forever pieces like my shiny shoes here. I just could not leave the store without them. There's certain forever pieces like that. That they dig into you and they start to grow roots immediately.
Absolutely.
And your dog piece, your bad dog, was that for me. And I wanted to see if you could translate your...
Yeah. So, and just kind of like, reflecting on it internally, with the piece, there's a series of this one dog repeated through different phases of an emotion or an action. For me, growing up the way I did, it definitely put me on a more potential for violent path. And it really turned me, I think I was born a very sensitive kid, but grew up in a hard way. So it sort of turned me into this bad dog, essentially. It's like finding yourself being the street kid in a country club all the time. You're like, okay, I might be a little more wild. I might be a little more reactive. And that's not necessarily, and I'm not leaning on that like it's a good thing, but it's also been a survival tool. But in that piece, you have this dog, and it's calm. It's the front runner of the piece, and it's looking at this detail that can be missed by most. And it's this little lamb, this little baby lamb. But what's going on with this dog and what I've related to growing up with an anger problem that I've rigorously tamed.
Okay.
Where it's like, me being very agreeable, it's just my way of, not letting stuff get to me, or just being more flexible and finding ways to turn opposition into opportunity, maybe.
Turning pain into power every minute, every hour, right?
Exactly. But in that piece, you see this dog who just wants peace, that lamb. And that's the only thing it's focused on. But what I relate to having that like anger, it's like, being in your yard, and there's a fence, like a gated fence that it can see through, and you have this bad dog. You have this dog. It's like it's aggressive. It wants to get out. It wants to fight. It wants to do something. It wants to react, and you have to have that strength to like keep a hold of that chain. And so that was for me, is like being able to rein that in, and maybe use it for something positive, and like be able to take that chain off. But for me, and coming from where I did, there's a lot of ways where I still feel like it's there, it's waiting, and I gotta, maintain, and every little thing could like, loosen that grip. But what's going on in that piece is it's going from this like enlightened, like, okay, I'm furious and I'm feeling that thing. That's when the dog's pointing straight up, and it's got like stars in it and everything. It's got this like sunburst behind it. It's that inspiration of passion. And then from there, and that's when it's got the most chain on it. The next phase, it's like lunging. It loses a whole ring of chain. And it's vicious. It's inspired. It's chasing that feeling. And then at the end, it has the least amount of chains. It's the most broken, and it's the most related to primitive art. Like even in the way that I styled that wolf or the dog is, it's almost like a Celtic or like a South American render of like a sculpture that you would see of a wolf or a coyote or something like that. And it's the most primal. It's the most like when you finally, like, we've all had these moments where we've gotten into an argument with somebody and you're in it. You're in that and you're like losing coordination. You're like shaking mad, and like you hit that conflict and you're just your most undone self.
Yeah, you're farthest away from control as you can be.
Yeah. And so that's what like having that is. And then where I want to be, or like how I see myself, is the calm. Like I want that peace. I want the lamb.
Oh, thank you so much, Alec. That's gorgeous. And it's sitting in our living room, and it impacted me much in the same way. And I saw myself in
Yeah, what
this
was your-
piece as
yeah, what was your
well, if you
relation?
don't mind me sharing briefly.
Love it.
It impacted me so much because I looked at this unchained wolf, and it's the gentle wolf that is seen as vicious or is seen
Right.
as non-controllable, and I am a feral woman. I
Yeah.
am a wild one, and but I've never been chained, and they've never been able to chain me.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be chained. I really appreciate my wildish nature, my
Yeah.
virility.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really I cherish in myself. And I've always seen that these people around me have their own chains.
Yeah.
And they're and they're bound by these limitations. And I've never bound myself by any limitations. In fact, quite
on
the
ya.
opposite.
Yeah,
Have
good
tried
on
not
ya.
to have any, so that I stay open and I stay ready.
Yeah.
But I am also an incredibly sensitive person as well.
Right. You're going to
and
pick up on it.
innately very gentle.
Yeah.
And I always want to be someone's peace. And when I'm not, it kills me inside. So, there's subconscious things going on behind with the wolves as well. But I always saw like society as these chained wolves, and they have all these, self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And this, trainable minds. I've never been trainable.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm just
Keep
not.
that.
Right. But I'm here to protect the lamb,
Yeah.
and I'm here
Yeah.
to love the lamb. So it had this really deeply ingrained meaning for me, and I just appreciate that piece.
Do you feel like
beyond.
even, and I find this too, you want, regardless of where you're coming from or how damaged you might be in a situation, you still want to be that peace for somebody else.
Yes.
I feel like maybe that's from being a parent to yourself so early on. You had all this chaos that, maybe wasn't something you could wrangle in.
Yes.
And then when you find the situation where like, somebody is not at rest necessarily,
Right.
you kind of want to like help get them to that.
Yeah, to usher the remembrance of being their own peace as well.
Right.
And I haven't always been everyone's peace.
Yeah.
I struggled with substance abuse, and that runs in my family. So that's something, like you say, with the wolves, like you've
Yeah.
got to, I like your analogy with having to hold it back and
Yeah,
keep
definitely.
it wrangled, keep it behind that fence and keep a grip on it.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because I'm gonna add that into the mentality looking at it now
Yeah.
too, because I
It's got
do
layers.
need that. It does. It
Yeah.
has so many layers, and
Yeah.
it's seemingly so simple because it's just black and white, and just I love your mark making.
Thank you.
Is
Thank
so incredibly unique. I think that was one of the first things I ever noticed about
Mm.
you, because I came around that easel to look
Yeah.
at my portrait, and I was wearing this feather collar,
Yeah.
and it really correlated with your mark
Oh,
making.
I was geeked. I'm like,
And
yes,
yeah.
more props. Like, let's let's
Yeah,
get some wild
and that was
costume
just
in here.
that was so fun.
Yeah.
That was such a great collaboration. But that was something I initially noticed, was that street style of the mark making. So, what is your favorite medium to work with that helps you with your own unique style?
I would say it's definitely situational. Like when we first met, it was in this drawing group, and I thought it was kind of funny that I'm kind of the young dude in this group, and they're all these very polished artists.
Yeah, you definitely stuck out. You're like, wait, how does he fit into this,
What's this dude
group?
doing here? No, seriously, and they all had this like more polished approach to what they were doing, and they were very intentional with what they were doing. I feel like, aside from like Chuck, he was a wild man.
Yeah.
He's a mad scientist. I loved it. But then I'm in there, not using like charcoals or graphites or pastels.
Yeah, those fat marker things.
I'm using
those-
graffiti markers.
Yeah.
I'm like rattling them like a fool. But I'd say, it depends. If I really want to get an idea out and like maybe surprise myself with how it turns out, I definitely like using those. And it's just like, they're like markers that are typically used for like tagging or something like that. But I'm like, let's make it classy. Let's tag it.
classy.
Let's tag it, but make it classy. So I was bringing them into the figure studies. But I have
Wow.
so much fun with those, because in drawing, I feel like a lot of times you can have that hesitation. Like, oh, this has to be perfect.
Yeah,
And I'm using
big
this
time.
fat ass marker, and I'm like, no, we're just like pedal to the metal. Like the second I set this
Yeah.
down, like we're making mistakes. Like we're going for it.
I love that, making mistakes.
Yeah, and it's making the process not too precious. So I like that because it frees me up and allows me to sort of like figure out more mark styles, and more, it's like learning a new way to strike. It's like learning, like a different variation on a hit, where I'm like, okay, if I hold the marker this way and then move it this fast and like dry it out just this much, it's going to give me all these cool streaks. But then, different things for different reasons. I like acrylic because it's just as impatient as I am. It
Hell
dries.
yeah, that's why seriously, I
Yeah.
was like, oil, I cannot.
don't have it.
It is
I don't
not
have the
for me.
patience for it,
I
yeah.
don't have the patience.
Yeah, and then I honestly, like, where I find that I can just kind of get lost and like really flow with my like entire body is using spray paint, because when you're drawing or painting, you're just using these joints here. You're moving from the knuckle. If you're drawing a little bit bigger, you might be moving from the wrist. At best, on a giant juicy piece, you might be working from the elbow. But if you're doing a mural with spray paint, if you're, whatever you're trying to get down with that, you're moving your entire body. Like mentally, I'm like, my whole body is the hand, and I'm just like,
It's so active and kinesthetic. That's what I
Yeah.
love about muraling too, because I am impatient, even with myself. I'm like, it's got to come out. It's got to come out right now, and it can't be precious mark making.
Right.
I'm like, I don't have time for this.
Right.
And especially as a mom and a homesteader, I'm like, give me a
You got a
wall,
lot to do,
and I'm gonna, exactly.
You do not have time to waste.
This is my last question I got, but it's what topic would you speak about if you're asked to give a TED talk on something outside of your main area of expertise? So like something non-art related. If you had to give a TED talk, and like get up there, go.
Yeah. Like not art specific.
Yeah, like just.
I would say finding ways to hit your flow, how to block out the world, essentially. Because like when I am creating, even if it's not painting, drawing, maybe it's cooking, I hit this jazz mindset almost. Like it's like an improv. I'm just like flowing.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is blocking out all the bullshit, right? And just like kind of turning into your own little universe.
Do you feel like the bullshit comes from outside or inside? Is it like, 'cause a lot of people when they see like a blank canvas or something, they're like, or like the blank paper, you're like, oh man, this.
It freaks you out.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, and even like if I'm on site, a lot of times I'm looking at a freshly primed, beautiful, patched up wall, and I'm like, I gotta fuck this up. like I'm gonna destroy this wall right now. So like, it's kind of like what you were saying with David Cho. He would just write his name or something. Like, okay, I just need to make a big wrong mark on this pristine surface, and then I can start.
oh, because do you feel like just so you can get that out of the way, so you don't have this like
Yeah,
perfect
it's not precious
thing.
anymore.
Yeah.
I would
Doesn't
definitely-
matter what kind of mark. Like you're just like
literally
Right.
Like, fuck it.
Right, like I did one at this gym, and it had a horizon line, but I like didn't even put it in the right spot at first, but I wasn't too worried about that. But I just like went from one end of this 32-foot wall with a black spray paint can, and nothing on this piece was supposed to be black. And I just like held it, and then I just walked the length of it, and I even have a video where I'm doing it, and I'm like.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, now it's ruined. I can start.
Wow, interesting.
Do you feel that has to do with your childhood, how you pulled from ruins in order to create a masterpiece of yourself?
I would definitely say, and also in the sense that, like, if you grow up and you don't have all the bells and whistles of life, essentially, precious things or, something that might be expensive or might seem out of reach almost make you nervous. It's like, oh, I don't want to ruin this thing, and it kind of goes back to the, like, I couldn't afford to fix it or something like that, and maybe my TED Talk would be on making things less precious.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, maybe that's where I'm going.
Hey, I like that. What's on the horizon for you?
Baby. Yeah.
The baby?
Yeah. So, so January 3rd is like our due date.
Wow.
And that was my last project. I just finished it a couple days ago. I did a nursery mural. So it was like my little like welcome. It was this like cloud that turned into this like adorable bear, because I didn't want to do like, a big gnarly furry beast.
Your typical bear, yeah.
Right.
That's something we love, is that when you think bears, you think Alec.
I know they're a symbol. They really are.
What is that symbol of the bear for you?
For a long time, I didn't relate anything specific. I just like left it be this thing I just felt some sort of connection with. And we all want to be connected to like a cool animal or something. But really reading into them, watching stuff about them, finding out that their patterns are like largely solitary, and they have to rely on their own ability, their own strength. I feel like also with them, typically they're not out looking for trouble. They just don't want to get messed with. And I feel like in a lot of ways that's
But
like,
don't mess with them.
but don't you dare, don't poke the bear, don't poke the bear. And I feel like a lot of, even, say maybe being born sensitive and then turned into more of a rough individual. Like I just didn't I don't want trouble, but like I'm ready for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't start, none won't be none.
Yeah.
But I would say, bears are that, and then in many cultures they're like a symbol for healing. So I think, that's another thing that I'm like, okay, this definitely resonates.
Oh, well, you found that out later, you said.
Yeah, so really I dove into like, I'm like, why do I do all the bears? Like I was born in Chicago, but I don't watch football.
I didn't.
Right.
Like I don't watch football. Like, it's not even that big of a thing. But I thought they were cool. And I felt something with them. And then another thing in life is like receiving signs, and whenever something was like changing in like a big, maybe it's a good or bad way, I would see bears just on everything everywhere. So they just sort of like popped up, and I would notice them, and I'm like, there's bears on like fucking like every single thing on this trip, and it's random.
Do you feel like that's your spirit animal?
I guess so. I think there's something to it, and I feel like it's been a huge symbol for me most of my life. I mean, as long as I've been paying attention, so I would say that there's something deeper there.
You say, as long as I've been paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been paying attention?
Since, I would say really since I started paint, like since I really started diving into doing art, and I think when you start diving into like a passion or something creatively, it's like a part of your brain unlocks and the fog moves away a bit. And so maybe that's like really when I started diving into this, and not even just to the point where I was like believing in my ability to accomplish it. But I would say since I've been paying attention was since I really gave myself a chance. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Quote me on that one.
Oh, that's
Yeah, that one you
beautiful.
could take
That's a
down.
great way to end it.
How old were you? Yeah. How old were you though when you gave yourself a chance?
A true shot at doing this was like, and it's where people say, you don't have to have it figured out right now. I would say when I really started clearing that internal fog was moving here. I got away from a lot of the things that were bogging me down. I got away from this like dark cloud that was hanging over Peoria, and like anybody who like leaves for a while and goes back, they're like, there's a dark cloud over this place.
I read it was like one of the top 15 crime cities in America.
It's vicious. Yeah. No, it can be, and there's great people there. Some of my favorite people on the planet are there.
Those little dandelions.
Seriously, and they're all growing out of the concrete because like, we notice that like the people that come out of there and the people that are striving there are just some of the hardest working, work through the muck type of people. And it's like every time I revisit, it's like, man, y'all are going through some real stuff. Like not like your everyday complaints, but like y'all are persevering through some real trials.
It's wild that you can grow up in that. And it's like the hero's journey. When you come back home, you see it in a different light and like what you came from. And like, I can't believe that was normal to me. Like,
right. Yeah, but it's good to come from that too, I think, because it makes you it makes you a harder animal, I guess.
So resilient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any upcoming shows?
So I have an upcoming solo Well, it's like, so I have one side of the space and there's another artist that has another section of the building. So my solo is going to be over at Mesquite Art Center. That's going to be April 4th. Not positive on the time itself yet. But the idea behind the show, and I just turned it in like yesterday morning. That was my first hour of the day, you know.
Hey,
Finished
nice.
up a writing. But the idea behind this, I'm calling it in parentheses, human nature. And so it's like paying attention to how we connect, the fact that, you know, we're humans, we're in this, you know, evolved state, whatever, and we're surrounded by technology, but like we're still animals, you know, and a lot of what we do is based on natural behavior and natural instinct. So that's something I really want to go back to, and like connection with people, and how we have these things that like make us like everybody else, but they also can like divide us from everybody else.
Wow.
So that's like going to be the focus of that show, is like more figure, but also that connection between like using animals a lot as like symbols and a way to relate the story of what's going on in the piece.
So we can look forward to more animal pieces.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. New
Nature's in it.
animals.
Yeah, probably. I think, so when I take on a different animal, I mean, a lot of them are just like this piece over here was the first time I painted a horse, you know, and it's like, it's my interpretation of like, it almost looks sculptural, because I'm sort of figuring out, the body, the musculature of it and everything. But what I'm doing when I'm painting an animal is I'm embracing a sort of mindset. Like the bears, it's like kind of relying on this strength, this resilience, but also like trying to find a way to have this power peacefully. With the horse, it's definitely like a work mentality. It's like, you know, I might not even, you know where I'm going necessarily, but I'm taking whatever I've got with me and I'm pushing like no other. With sharks have been popping up a lot more recently. And that's like this kind of, you know, we all have these sort of like burnout phases. And then that's kind of what steered me to them, is because if a shark stops swimming, if it stops moving,
Yes.
it dies. And so finding that way to stay hungry, stay in motion, like even if I'm burnt out, like still try and keep that creative wheel spinning.
Doesn't matter how fast you're moving, as long as you're still moving.
Yeah, still progressing somehow, you know, still got to rest, but it's
That's
hard.
beautiful. What would you like to leave the audience with if they had to take, you know, one thing from you?
I would definitely say it's a mentality thing. You know, I think it's a big part of me, a big part of what I'm doing, a big part of like how I interact is kind of a no matter where you're coming from sort of a mentality. If you're willing to do the work, which we do live in this society where everything is like very fast paced, instant gratification. But if you're willing to wait it out, if you're willing to like push and work and put in borderline inhumane hours, like you can do just about anything you're supposed to be doing, you know, anything that can push you forward. It's this hard-headed, just relentless sort of mindset I think is necessary to do something, you know, beyond the social standard.
I like that. It reminds me, do you know Francis Ngannou's story?
Yeah,
Like,
he
he's
was
like
working. Yeah, he was
like-
working in the mines. And
Yeah,
then,
and like having to go to Europe and getting arrested. Like they say he like crossed this river and they just get caught. He got caught 7 times.
Yeah.
And they put him back in like the desert and shit. And but
Right.
then to go
Could
and
not
keep
stop him.
going, and then now he's like
Yeah.
world champ. I'm like, dude, that's
Yeah.
it's very very inspirational. It just reminded me of everything you just said.
I would say, yeah, it's a big thing is to have this mentality of being unstoppable. There's even this, you know, I'm going to nerd out for a second, but like the Juggernaut, right? Like the second he's in motion,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't stop him.
Yeah.
Like
I
nothing can
reference the
stop him.
Juggernaut a lot too.
Right, you know, and it's about having that, like, even if something's trying to stop you, you're like, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. Like,
I'm the unstoppable object. Yeah.
right, seriously.
But do you allow yourself to rest? What do you do to rest?
I like have to be reined in, like I do, and that's like
Does
it's.
Shayna do that for you? Does she say,
Yeah,
hey,
she
babe,
tries.
You need,
Yeah,
you need to
she
chill
gives
for
it a good
minute?
shot. She's definitely my lion tamer, and reminds me that like you gotta just allow it, because there will be times where I'm just taking a day, and like people take days off every week, multiple. And then I'll just be like chilling, watching a show or something, trying to just like turn the switch off for a moment. And then I'll like go and like, is this all right? Like, is this
it
cool?
okay to rest?
Is it
I'm
okay
the
that I'm
same
doing
way.
this?
He's like, you've got to sit down at some point, babe. Like,
Yeah.
Do you feel like guilty when you you're like, I could be doing something?
Yeah, because also being like a self-starter, being in a position where I'm running my own operation,
Yeah.
which I'm eternally grateful for, but maybe a little too grateful sometimes because I can't let it go.
'Cause you're not clocking out or anything.
I don't.
So,
Yeah, I don't clock out. But she is like really good at just being like, look, you got to take it easy, because also being able to rest, it helps you like have more energy for the next bout, essentially. But I feel so guilty because running my own thing, every time I'm not actively working on something, I have this feeling that like, oh, I'm slacking off.
Yeah.
And maybe that's even from like past jobs. I was like a grunt at a wood shop, and like that place was just insane. And like you could be sitting and working on a job like faster than the person next to you, but they would see you sitting and they're like,
Oh,
you're a piece of shit. So it's like, finding that way to not feel guilty about just taking a breather, or like even on vacations.
Yeah.
Vacations are a huge problem for me, almost, because like I'll see other art shows, other events and stuff going on here, and I'm like, I should
getting left behind kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, like wait a second,
you
I'm
shit
out.
on yourself.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's a mess. But like even on our honeymoon, like for the first like day, I was just like, no, I know, like I'm in the moment, I'm here, I'm in a different country, like I need to chill. And I'm seeing like all this stuff going on back here, and I'm like feeling the sense of guilt, like I need to, but I'm like, I'm on my honeymoon, like fuck all that stuff. But it's like kind of finding ways to overcome that guilt of like, oh, I'm actually just living my life for a moment. And not just working, because I mean, even though I love what I'm doing, if I'm not living it all, like,
Yeah.
what's it for?
Exactly. Yeah, that's like such an American thing too. Like just to like keep going and like go
Work.
Yeah, which has its benefits, but I could see it's always like a work play kind of balance kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, there was a person once who really brought it to center for me and said, you need to celebrate your little wins. Because I was relentless. I would get to that next step in like a video game. I'm like, okay, on to the next level, and I wouldn't pause to celebrate my little wins and look at how far I've come from where I've been.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, take a deep breath, really, really steep in that for just a moment. Allow yourself to, that little bit of pride, that little bit of reflection, a little bit of celebration.
Exactly. Yeah. Celebrate yourself, celebrate your accomplishments. A lot of people that run this same sort of business, a lot of muralists that I talk to, a lot of my other friends in creative industries, they say like, oh, how do you feel when you finally finish a piece? And you're like, do you just feel like super proud? Do you feel super happy? I'm like, no. Well, I mean, like I do. I'm like, wow, I did that. But then I'm also like, now what?
Yeah.
And it's like learning to like postpone that feeling, that like now what thought, or that like, oh, I'm lost again. Because this is what I'm doing is very much like a contracting gig. It's very much like living as a contractor, that like the next job, if there isn't something already lined up, isn't there. You're just kind of floating out in open water, and like finding ways to just be like, well, at least I'm floating, dude. Yeah,
I've heard that with some fighters. They say like when they're not in camp, they like borderline get depressed because I'm not doing my thing. I'm like I need to like be working, but when you see what they do all the whole year, you're like, dude, man, you've earned it, man.
Yeah,
like,
chill.
come on,
Like,
but
something's gonna blow.
But I get the mind. That's how you get to the top, though. I see that how that has a benefit, though. But you can't let it be detrimental to you, though.
Right. It's you gotta heal in between.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Prepare. Well, we're gonna thank you for your time.
Well,
thank you for having us.
For it. Yeah, it's always good to have a little good conversation.
Yes, I appreciate this so much. It was a long time coming.
Yeah.
Can you tell the people where to find you?
I mean, of course, like any way you can type in Alec DeJesus, I'll pop up. But also like Instagram. I'm not like really on TikTok unless I'm watching funny videos and wasting some brain space. But both of those is you can call me Alec. Just simple as that. A little nod to Paul Simon.
Oh, okay.
But also because everyone calls me Alex. So I'm like, nah, man, you can call me Alec. So it's a little slick, but it's also a little music.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, appreciate it, man. It was an awesome
course.
conversation.
I appreciate it.
This was so illuminating and beautiful. Thank you. Much
course.
gratitude to you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
And just congratulations on the fatherhood and all the beauty that
Yeah.
you've created in your life for yourself, being
Thank
a
you.
self-made man. And I know there's been people propelling you
Yeah.
forward also.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
takes a village. You know,
showing
it
you
does.
yourself so that you can pursue this. But
Yeah.
thank you for your art in the
Oh,
world.
of course. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to see like where it all goes and just how far you go,
Same.
man. Because I
Same.
feel like
I have no
your
clue.
stock is going up, man. So
Well, it's an investment, right? Like
Yeah.
art's an investment, and you want to make a safe bet. Like I'm safe.
Oh, yeah. Safe, to feel safe. That's beautiful. Well, love from the Fringe. All thank you for sitting with us for a time with Alec DeJesus here in Dallas at the
Cedars Union.
Cedars
Yeah.
Union. Look it up. Pretty rad people. Thank you.